have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
From the early BCs, slavery has been a form of widespread racism. In Northern American history, the earliest attempt of using slaves was in 1619. The English bought and sold slaves from Africa to many other continents, including the United States, had them working on plantations and in houses, while being forced to live in the poorest of living conditions, were not treated as human beings, and had no basic human rights. When the American Civil War began in 1861, there were some rights that were given to fight along with the colonists. After many milestones that African and African Americans had to face, President Abe Lincoln wrote the 13th Amendment, setting all slaves free in 1865. He also wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, stating slavery to be legal. In 1898, when Jim Crow laws were introduced, African Americans were free but not yet equal. They still had many obstacles to overcome and battles to fight. Jim Crow laws were named after Thomas "Daddy" Rice, a street performer that took on this persona from a song called "Jump Jim Crow" while touring the South. These laws legally allowed separation based on color while simultaneously degrading people of color as a whole.
African Americans were not the only oppressed race. Following the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Navy in 1941, the U.S. government started building internment camps around the country, but mainly in the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, displacing about 100,000 Japanese Americans, because the U.S. thought they were Japanese spies. Camps used to even be present on the Puyallup State Fairgrounds.
The first park on our journey will be Sam Smith Park. Sam Smith, after serving his term in World War II, came to Seattle in 1942. He was the first African American to be elected in Seattle's City Council, as well as the second state legislator from King County. One of his first acts while in legislature in 1958 was introducing a bill that would ban the discrimination based on race and or religion in the sale or renting of homes. Though this bill never had passed within his term, he never stopped pursuing this cause. In 1967, Sam Smith was re-elected in a city council, furthering efforts to promote social justice while paving the way to bridging the gap between cultural and political norms that inhibited the diverse population of Seattle. Sam Smith died on November 15, 1995. The city of Seattle named the central portion of the I-90 lid after him to honor his legacy in 1998. The Urban League noted that Smith's ability to bring people together with different and often competing interests during difficult times is legendary. This park is the ideal symbol of his collaborative spirit and commitment to all people.
As diverse as the city of Seattle is now, it wasn't like this in the mid-1900s. As you can see from this first map, it states that the African American population in 1920 was 2,984, with each dot representing 25 people. In the same year, the Chinese population was 1,351. And for the Japanese population, it was 7,874. Starting with the African American population in 1960, it shot up to 26,901, the Chinese up to 4,076, and the Japanese to 9,351. So if you guessed the central area, you're correct.
One other park we will be visiting on our MLK journey is Powell Barnett Park. Powell Barnett moved to Washington State in 1889. His father, a former slave, and as a teenager, Mr. Barnett worked in the coal mines and was even a member of an all-whites musicians union. Mr. Barnett was a man full of passion, energy, many interests, and a leader in his Leshai community. The Leshai Improvement Council voted to name the park after Mr. Barnett to honor the council's organizer and first president. He was an influential and inspiring man who focused a lot of his efforts towards improving the race relations and civic unity of the City Council, Seattle Urban League, and even led in organizing and was instrumental in uniting blacks and whites in the East Madison YMCA on 23rd Avenue. Originally chosen by the City Planning Commission to be used by Garfield High School as their track and field in 1962, Parks and Recreation bought the land in 1966 and developed the land into a park, naming it in Powell Barnett's honor in 1969. Mr. Barnett passed away in March of 1971.
Home loans in the Seattle area were easy to get if you were white. African Americans faced discrimination even when trying to purchase homes, especially outside of the Central District. One man that wasn't faced with these disparities was Sidney Gerber. He spent decades trying to improve the climate for civil rights in Seattle. As a realtor, he played a key role in the open housing campaigns of the early 1960s. He created an open housing listing service to make it possible for African American and Asian American families to buy and rent homes outside of the central area. His Harmony Homes project helped break segregation in the Kirkland and Bellevue areas. Sadly, he, along with the Pacific Northwest first American of Asian descent to serve in public office, Wing Luke, died in a plane crash in 1965. Gerber Park at MLK Way and Cherry Street in the central area is named after Sidney Gerber.
Which brings us to Martin Luther King Jr. and why we celebrate his life, his journey, legacy, and his dream that still lives on nearly 44 years after his assassination. January 15th is the day that Dr. King was born and is observed as a national holiday every year on the third Monday of January. His inspirational speeches and actions for nonviolent activism during the Civil Rights Movement were recognized by the United States government in 1986. President Ronald Reagan signed his holiday into law just a few years before in 1983. The holiday wasn't recognized by all 50 states until just 12 years ago in 2000. In 1961, Dr. King visited Seattle. Among the places he visited were the University of Washington, Mount Zion Baptist Church in the Central area, Temple de Hirsch, and Garfield High School. Dr. King's legacy still lives on in Seattle. In 1982, Empire Way was renamed to Martin Luther King Jr. Way. Besides Seattle, 730 cities across the United States, including 39 states, have a street named after Dr. King. Also in commemoration to Dr. King in 1986, King County Council voted to commemorate King County to Dr. King rather than Vice President-elect from 1852. And in 1991, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park was dedicated to him. The sculpture represents his climb to the mountaintop in his very last speech, the day before he was assassinated in 1968.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now.
As we and the rest of the world celebrate Dr. King and our local civil rights leaders' passion and vision of equality, you as youth have the power to make the wrongs in this world right. We challenge you to carry on the dream in your own personal way. either in the box below or at the end of the march as an art project, or using your cell phone, scan in the QR code at the bottom of your screen. The next step on your journey is joining us for the MLK Youth March on Saturday, January 14th, starting at Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park at 1 p.m.